Good morning/afternoon, everyone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller than you were before it started? Silence is often mistaken for weakness. People assume if you don't respond, you must not have the words. If you don't react, you must not care. But here's the truth. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence. It's strength held back. It's power under control. It is, in its purest form, a weapon. Not because it's loud, but because it's calm in the face of chaos. Because when everything around you is trying to provoke a storm and you stand still, composed, unbothered, intentional, that's when silence becomes your sharpest blade. Toxic people crave a reaction. That's their currency. They push buttons, poke wounds, manipulate situations just to get a rise out of you. They want you to get emotional, to stumble, to doubt yourself, to look irrational, because that's how they gain leverage. But when you refuse to engage, when you let their noise echo into nothing, they begin to lose their grip. Why? Because silence forces them to deal with themselves. It puts the mirror right in front of their face, and they can't stand their own reflection without your distraction. Think about it. When you speak in anger, when you defend what doesn't deserve your defense, you give someone access to your peace. But when you stay quiet, not in defeat, but in discipline, you take that power back. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring what was done. It means you've evaluated it and decided it's not worth your time, your voice, or your energy. That's a whole different level of control, and it's one toxic people fear more than confrontation. There's a kind of confidence that comes with not having to explain yourself. When you're grounded in who you are, you stop needing to convince others. You stop needing to argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop allowing drama to rent space in your head. Instead, you respond with stillness. You respond with nothing, because not every action deserves a reaction, and not every person deserves your voice. Sometimes the most intelligent, self-respecting thing you can do is walk away in complete silence. And here's the powerful twist. Silence is not just a response to others. It's a message to yourself. It says, I choose me. I choose my peace over your chaos, my clarity over your confusion, my growth over your games. Every time you stay quiet in a moment where you were expected to lose control, you reinforce your own inner authority. You tell yourself, I don't need to prove anything to anyone who doesn't see my value. That's power, that's maturity, that's strength. We've been taught that strength is loud, that power is spoken, that justice means fighting back. But not everything needs to be said to be known. Not everything needs to be proven to be true. Sometimes the deepest strength is restraint. Sometimes the loudest message is no message at all. Silence says, I heard you, I saw what you did, and I still choose not to let it change who I am. Silence says, you don't get to live rent-free in my mind. Silence says, I'm still here, still standing, and you no longer have access to the parts of me you used to exploit. This is not easy. Choosing silence takes discipline. It takes clarity. It takes an unshakable understanding of your own worth. Because the urge to respond, to defend, to lash out, it's strong, especially when you've been disrespected or mistreated. But every time you resist that urge, every time you choose composure over chaos, you're building emotional armor. You're training yourself not to react from ego, but from wisdom. You're rewriting the script that says you must always fight to be heard. You don't, not with people who aren't listening, not with those who twist your words, not with those who feed on conflict like oxygen. Silence, when used intentionally, is the highest form of emotional intelligence. It protects your energy, it guards your dignity, it leaves the other person wrestling with their own actions, their own guilt, their own behavior, without your interference, and that is what makes it a weapon. Because silence doesn't just end a conversation, it echoes, it lingers, it haunts, and the people who once depended on your reactions will begin to realize they can no longer reach you the way they used to. Use it wisely, use it not to punish but to protect, not to hurt but to heal yourself. Because sometimes the loudest declaration of power is saying nothing at all. Let me know if you'd like this adapted for audio, video narration, or formatted into a visual post or speech slide. Boundaries are not negotiable. written in a professional, emotionally powerful tone, without subheadings or a conclusion. There comes a point in your life where you must draw a line, not with anger, not with hate, but with clarity. That line is called a boundary, and the moment you realize your peace, your time, your self-respect are worth protecting, you stop allowing people to cross that line so easily. Boundaries are not selfish. They are not walls built to isolate, but fences built to define. They say, "This is where I end and you begin." And once you set them, they are not suggestions. They are not invitations for negotiation. They are non-negotiable. People who truly care for you will respect your boundaries without question. It's the ones who benefit from you having none that push back the hardest. That's how you know you're doing it right. The resistance you feel when you enforce a boundary isn't a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you've stopped making yourself small for the sake of someone else's comfort. The pushback isn't your cue to fold. It's your cue to stand taller. Setting a boundary is one of the most courageous acts of self-love there is, because it means you're willing to risk being misunderstood, disliked, or even rejected in order to honor your own needs. It means you're choosing your sanity over someone else's approval. That's not weakness, that's power, that's maturity. That's you deciding once and for all that your well-being is not up for debate. But here's the thing. Setting boundaries is only the first step. Enforcing them, that's where the real strength lies, because some people will test you. They'll pretend not to hear you. They'll minimize your words. They'll twist your intentions. They'll say things like, "You've changed," when in reality, you've simply stopped allowing them to take advantage of you. They'll accuse you of being cold or distant, when all you've done is say, "Enough." Don't let that guilt trip pull you back into the version of yourself that tolerated what you now see as unacceptable. When you decide that your boundaries are not negotiable, you stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop feeling guilty for saying no. You stop watering yourself down just to be digestible to people who were never meant to have that much access to you in the first place. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and some people, no matter how long they've known you or how much they claim to care, should be watching you from the sidelines, not standing in your inner circle. The truth is, people who repeatedly violate your boundaries are not confused. They're just hoping you'll give in. They're hoping the old you, the one who stayed silent, the one who avoided conflict, the one who said yes when you wanted to scream no, will come back. But when you hold firm, when you stand by your boundaries without wavering, something amazing happens. They either adjust or they exit, and either outcome, it's a win. It's not your job to convince others to respect you. It's your job to respect yourself so fully that others either rise to meet that standard or remove themselves. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, by what you tolerate, by what you make excuses for. The moment you stop tolerating the bare minimum, the moment you stop making excuses for mistreatment, the game changes. This doesn't mean you shut the world out. It doesn't mean you stop loving deeply or caring genuinely. It means you choose who you give that love and care to with discernment. It means your kindness has boundaries, your time has boundaries, your mental space has boundaries, and if someone can't honor that, they don't get to stay. It's as simple and as serious as that. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about taking control of yourself. They are the line between who you are and who you refuse to be anymore. They're how you protect your future from the patterns of your past. And once you understand their power, once you feel what it's like to be fully in charge of your life, you'll never apologize for having them again. You'll never shrink to make others comfortable. You'll never negotiate your peace to avoid confrontation. Because you've learned that anyone who truly sees your worth will never ask you to erase yourself just to be loved, and that is why your boundaries are not negotiable. Let me know if you'd like this formatted into a speech, carousel post, or video script. Happy to adapt it further. Validation comes from within, written in a powerful, professional, and emotionally rich voice, without subheadings or a conclusion as requested. There's a moment in your life when you finally get tired of chasing approval, tired of bending over backwards to be liked, tired of shaping yourself into something palatable just to earn a nod from someone else. And in that moment, if you're paying attention, something powerful awakens in you. You realize that the permission you were always waiting for isn't coming from the outside. It never was, because the truth is, validation comes from within. For most of us, we were taught early on to seek affirmation, to look for a gold star, applause, permission, attention, or praise. We tied our self-worth to someone else's reaction. If they were pleased, we were proud. If they disapproved, we felt shame. That cycle becomes addictive. You learn to perform instead of live. You start asking, "Am I good enough?" instead of saying, "I know I am." But what if you stopped performing? What if you stopped asking the world to tell you who you are? When you truly understand your own value, you stop trying to convince others to see it. You stop chasing compliments that mean nothing when they come from people who don't even know the real you. You stop waiting for that text, that invitation, that pat on the back, as if it's the confirmation stamp of your worth, because deep down you start to feel the shift. You realize that external approval is fleeting, and honestly, it's unreliable. One day, you're everyone's favorite, the next day, you're forgotten. But when you approve of yourself, you become unshakable. There's real freedom in not needing constant reassurance. You no longer filter your choices through someone else's expectations. You no longer fear disapproval like it's a death sentence. You live boldly because you've already said yes to yourself. That's the kind of power no one can give you, and no one can take away. It's yours. And once you own it, you stop settling for crumbs of validation from people who can't even feed themselves emotionally. The people who don't see your worth are not your audience. Their indifference does not define your value. Their silence does not equal your invisibility. Their rejection is not your truth. You are not here to convince, to beg, to plead. You are here to be, and that being strong, whole, imperfect, evolving is already worthy. You don't have to become anything to earn what you already are. When you finally believe that, not just intellectually but emotionally, you stop shrinking in rooms where you were meant to rise. There's something magnetic about someone who validates themselves. You can feel it when they enter a room. They're not loud, but they're certain. They don't need to dominate because they're grounded. They don't crumble under criticism, and they don't inflate under praise. They stay centered, steady, sure, and that energy, it makes people take notice, not because they're trying to be noticed, but because they're not trying at all. When you validate yourself, you stop being so easily manipulated. You stop falling for flattery that hides hidden agendas. You stop fearing criticism because your identity isn't tied to someone else's opinion. You can say no without guilt. You can walk away without explanation. You can stand alone without crumbling because you know who you are and you know what you're not. That clarity is armor. You weren't put here to live under the constant judgment of people who don't even understand their own worth. Their standards aren't your blueprint. Their approval isn't your oxygen. Their applause isn't your fuel. Your soul knows what it needs. Your heart knows when it's being true. And your gut, it always knows when you're living for them instead of for yourself. So, choose you loudly, unapologetically, consistently. Validate yourself before anyone else has the chance. Speak your truth without waiting for someone to echo it back. Approve of your growth even when no one else sees it. Stand in the mirror and say, "I'm proud of how far I've come." Even when no one else claps, that's real power, that's real peace. Because the moment you stop outsourcing your worth to the world, you take your power back. Fully, finally, completely. Let me know if you'd like this transformed into a spoken word video, a carousel for social media, or adapted into a personal letter or speech format. Confidence is the ultimate deterrent, written in a bold, realistic, emotionally grounded tone. Without subheadings or a conclusion, just as you asked, confidence doesn't have to announce itself. It doesn't walk into a room needing attention. It doesn't scream to be seen. Real confidence is quiet, calm, and undeniable. It's the kind of presence that shifts energy without demanding it. It's in your posture, your tone, your choices, and your refusal to shrink. And when it's real, when it's rooted, not rehearsed, it becomes your strongest form of protection, not because it intimidates people, but because it reveals who can't handle your strength. The truth is, people who manipulate, control, or disrespect others don't target the strong. They go after those who doubt themselves. They test the boundaries of people who second, guess their own worth. They feed off hesitation, insecurity, and silence. That's why confidence is the ultimate deterrent. It sends a message before you even open your mouth. I know who I am. You don't get to shake that. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to fight to be respected. You just have to own your space so fully that anyone with ill intent knows immediately they're not getting in. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about no longer feeling less than. It's about standing tall in your own skin and not needing permission to exist unapologetically. When you walk with that energy, toxic people lose interest. They know they can't gaslight you into questioning your reality. They know they can't twist your emotions to control your behavior. They know they can't play their usual games because you've stopped showing up to their arena. Confidence in that way is silent resistance. It says, you don't have access to me, without needing to explain why. You become unshakable when your confidence comes from within, not from titles, not from appearances, not from someone else's validation. Because when your sense of worth is dependent on external things, it's fragile. But when it's built on self-respect, discipline, and lived experience, it becomes immovable. You've already proven to yourself that you can survive the fall and rise again. You've learned your own resilience firsthand. That kind of confidence doesn't flinch. It doesn't apologize for existing. It doesn't chase what doesn't belong to it. People treat you differently when you carry yourself with certainty. You don't even have to say, "Don't mess with me." They just feel it, in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you don't beg for love, attention, or understanding, in the way you leave quietly when you're not respected. That's the kind of energy that confuses people who are used to breaking others down. They don't know what to do with someone who refuses to be shaken. That's why confidence is a deterrent. It exposes weakness in those who try to exploit it in others. Confidence doesn't guarantee you'll never be hurt. It doesn't mean life stops testing you, but it means you no longer crumble under pressure. You no longer entertain what doesn't align with your values. You no longer keep people around out of fear or guilt. You become selective, not out of ego, but out of wisdom. You've outgrown the need to prove anything to anyone, and that unsettles people who only feel powerful when they're surrounded by those who need their approval to feel worthy. When you know who you are, you no longer fear who might leave. You no longer bend just to keep the peace. You become dangerous in the best way because you stop being controlled by fear. You stop being manipulated by flattery or threats. You don't get pulled into drama because your self-esteem isn't built on being liked, needed, or accepted. You already accept yourself. You already like the person you've become. That's the edge. That's the shield. The irony is, the more confidence you build, the less you need to show it. It becomes natural. It becomes embedded in your decisions, your boundaries, your energy, and slowly the noise around you gets quieter. The wrong people drift away, not because you told them to leave, but because they realize they can't move you. The games don't work. The manipulation falls flat. The guilt doesn't land, because the version of you that once relied on external permission no longer exists. That's what makes confidence the ultimate deterrent. It protects you without a fight. It repels toxicity without confrontation. It frees you without permission, and once it's real, you never go back. Let me know if you'd like this converted into a video monologue, spoken audio, or styled for social media or presentation. Protect your energy like a fortress, written in a strong, emotionally intelligent, and professional tone, without subheadings or conclusion, as you requested. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every situation deserves a reaction. Not every opinion should be allowed to plant seeds in your mind. In a world that constantly pulls at your attention, drains your focus, and tests your patience, protecting your energy isn't optional. It's survival. You have to treat it like a fortress, guarded, intentionally designed, impenetrable to anything that doesn't serve your peace, purpose, or progress. Energy is your currency. Where you spend it determines what you build. And too many people are going broke emotionally because they keep investing in the wrong things. Arguments that go nowhere, people who never change, cycles that only exhaust them. They're wide open to everything and everyone, without filters, without standards, without a gate. But a fortress doesn't just open its doors to anyone who knocks. It doesn't offer comfort to invaders. It doesn't apologize for locking out threats. Your personal energy deserves that same level of protection. You know the feeling. You walk into a room and your mood shifts. Someone speaks and suddenly your chest tightens. A phone call leaves you drained for hours. That's not just coincidence. That's your energy being pulled, manipulated, or poisoned by environments or people that do not align with your frequency. You have to listen to that. Your body knows, your spirit knows, your peace is information. Protecting your energy starts by believing what you feel, even when you can't explain it to others, especially then. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming wise. It means understanding that access to your time, your thoughts, your presence is a privilege, not a default. If someone is constantly leaving you tired, anxious, doubting yourself, second, guessing your worth, they're not respecting your energy. And if they're not respecting it, they shouldn't be allowed near it. No matter who they are, no matter how long you've known them, loyalty should never cost you your inner peace. There's a quiet kind of strength that comes with being unavailable to chaos. You stop chasing closure, stop explaining your boundaries, stop overgiving in the hope someone will see your value. You step back, not to hurt anyone, but to protect what you've worked so hard to build inside yourself. That healing, that self-trust, that clarity you fought for. You don't let anyone drag you back into the storm just because they're still living in it. You can care without carrying. You can love without losing yourself. People will call you selfish when you stop being their emotional dumping ground. They'll say you've changed when you stop saying yes to their dysfunction. Let them, because they were never reacting to your true self. They were reacting to your lack of boundaries. When your energy was open and unguarded, they had access to parts of you they never earned. And now that you're protecting those parts, they're uncomfortable. That's not your problem to fix. A fortress is built with intention. So is your life. What you allow in shapes what you become. Are you letting in noise or nourishment? Are you surrounding yourself with people who elevate your spirit or drain your soul? Protecting your energy doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet decisions, not responding, not attending, not explaining, just choosing every single day to put your peace first. You'll notice something as you build those walls around your energy. You'll gain clarity. Things that used to bother you won't even reach you. People who used to trigger you will feel distant. Why? Because your focus has shifted. You're no longer operating from survival. You're building with intention. And intentional people don't waste energy. They direct it. They conserve it. They master it. Protecting your energy also means protecting your self-talk. You can't create a fortress around your life if your mind is filled with cracks, doubt, guilt, shame, fear. You have to guard your inner dialogue with the same intensity. Speak to yourself like someone worth protecting. Because if you don't believe you're worth defending, you'll keep letting people through the gates who only bring destruction. At some point, you realize you don't have to fight every battle, attend every argument, or please every person. You just have to be true to yourself. That's where your strength is. That's where your energy lives. And when you learn to protect it like a fortress, nothing, absolutely nothing, can break you from the outside. Let me know if you'd like this turned into a narrated video script, podcast monologue, or content for a visual post. Disengage with grace, not guilt, written in a professional, emotionally grounded tone without subheadings or conclusion, just as you requested. There comes a moment in your life when you realize that not every door deserves to stay open, not every conversation needs to be finished, and not every connection is meant to be forever. Disengaging doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you cruel. It makes you conscious of your time, your energy, your emotional well-being. Walking away is not always about giving up. It's about choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over validation, and clarity over confusion. The key is learning how to do it with grace, not guilt. You don't owe anyone your constant presence, especially when that presence costs you your sense of peace. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is step back, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet strength. Disengaging with grace means understanding when to stop showing up for people who only notice you when they need something. It means no longer sacrificing your own emotional stability for the sake of keeping someone else comfortable. Grace is not weakness. It's knowing how to leave the table when love is no longer being served without flipping the table over on your way out. So often, we stay longer than we should, not because things are good, but because we feel guilty for leaving. Guilt convinces us that if we cared, we would stay, that setting a boundary is betrayal, that saying no more makes us selfish, but guilt lies. Guilt ties your worth to how much you can endure. Grace reminds you that you're allowed to choose yourself without needing permission. You are not obligated to stay in spaces that constantly drain you just to be seen as loyal. Loyalty to others should never require disloyalty to yourself. Disengaging with grace means being able to walk away without the need to be right, without the urge to explain yourself 1,000 times. It's choosing silence over endless confrontation. It's allowing people to misunderstand you because proving your point is no longer your priority. You don't need to shout to be heard by people committed to not listening. You don't need to keep reopening wounds just to justify your healing. The peace you're protecting speaks louder than your explanations ever could. There is nothing noble about staying connected to dysfunction. There is no prize for tolerating mistreatment. There is no honor in betraying yourself just to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Graceful disengagement means you've outgrown the need for dramatic exits. You can leave quietly with your dignity intact and your head held high. You can honor what something once was while still recognizing it no longer fits. That's not bitterness, that's evolution. Not everyone will understand your decision to step back. Some will call you distant, cold, or unkind. Let them. You're not responsible for the version of you they've created in their mind. You're only responsible for being honest about what you can no longer carry. Grace isn't always soft. Sometimes it's firm. Sometimes it's the silent, resolute act of choosing not to respond, not to engage, not to pick up battles that were never yours to begin with. Guilt will try to creep in. It will whisper that you're abandoning people, that you should try harder, that you're giving up too soon. But grace speaks a different language. Grace says, you've done enough, you've given enough. Now it's time to release what is not yours to fix. Grace reminds you that your peace is not up for debate, that protecting your energy is not something you need to justify, that it's okay to care and still choose distance, that it's okay to love someone and still let them go. Walking away with grace means knowing the difference between self-sacrifice and self-harm. It means recognizing that preserving your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being is not selfish, it's essential. You can still wish someone well and no longer wish to walk beside them. You can carry memories without carrying the person. You can move forward without bitterness, without anger. Just space, just peace. The truth is, you don't need a dramatic ending to honor a quiet decision. Disengaging with grace means trusting yourself enough to know when something is finished, and that you're allowed to close the door, not with a bang, but with a deep breath, and no guilt at all.